Welcome to Booze and Bourbon, a podcast where we talk about all things paranormal, and bourbon too. Now, here are your two ghostess hostesses with the mostest, Kim and Jen.
Welcome back, everybody, to Booze and Bourbon. I'm Jen, and this is Kim.
Hello, Jen. How are you?
Fandandle. I don't know what word that is, but
I gotta call Webster's Dictionary, get that added in, because I like it.
Fandandle, yes. And yourself.
I'm great. Getting some things done around the house. Did put up my Christmas decorations. Been doing a lot of research just on, fun paranormal topics.
Aside from some things that have been happening at home, which we'll get into shortly, it's been fine.
No, you need to tell me now. What's going on?
Well, as you know, we obviously have like Robert and Sharon who've been lingering for some time. Mm-hmm. But then I recently acquired this lovely box that...
Oh, sweet Jesus. The Ouija board.
Yeah. So obviously the first couple of days we had come back, I didn't think anything of it. I just left it where it was, and that was that. But me and my boyfriend were eating dinner at the table there in the dining room pretty much 2 nights in a row. And both times we sat down to eat, the lights would go on and off while we were eating. And the board was sitting literally 2 feet away from me. So that was that. And that's when he got a little hyped up and was like, get it outside, put it in the shed. It shouldn't be in here anymore.
Yes.
And then last night's event really put me over the edge. I had fallen asleep quite easily for once, which was great. I then had a weird dream of myself in my bed. So basically exactly where I already was, but I was
like
dreaming.
A point of view dream, like an outside of body?
No, like I knew it was me sleeping because it was like I could feel myself laying down and I could see my door. And then in the dream, my door flings open and there's just this black mass in my bedroom. And then it just comes very fast towards me.
Oh my God.
But to make it worse, as that fucking happened, I woke up, sat straight up in my bed, and my door was open. And I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, I have goosebumps even saying it because I was like in sheer panic. And I was like, I had to get up and like go contain myself for a minute and was like, did something open my door? And then I was like, no, I shut my door. Like, I know I shut my door. I always shut my door. Like, and I mean, if it's partially open, then it can come open more on its own, obviously. But it was like I woke up so suddenly after having that horrible dream, and there's my door open. And I'm like, no, the board's going outside now. The board is going outside now. What is happening in my house?
I have tears in my eyes. I'm so scared. I'm so sorry that we left that at your house.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. I mean, I did offer to take it, which it was funny at first, but now I'm like, no, I don't want it. I'm going to put it in the shed, and that's where it's going to stay until we need it again.
Okay.
But I'm also going to do a little sage, and I'm just going to send whatever may be here off outside with the board, hopefully. I don't know.
Excuse me. A little? You need to
maybe
buy
a lot of sage.
Yeah, an extra value jumbo pack.
I might
what
even
the hell?
Might even sleep with like 3 white candles burning beside my bed. I'll put a cross on the headboard. Yeah.
Sweet Jesus. Oh my God, Jen, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, to lighten the mood, I think we need to have a little bit to bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
I feel very good about it, actually, especially currently right now while I sit in my bedroom here.
Oh, good. So today we are going to taste together because you have samples because of our lovely friend over at Jim Beam.
Mm-hmm.
We have what does the label say on yours, Jen?
Mine says Booker's Bourbon Small Batch 2019-01E.
Okay, that is so perfect because that is Teresa's batch. It was the first of 2019, and it's a bourbon by Fred No, and it's dedicated to a woman named Teresa Whittemer. Jim Beam has honored a female figure with these batch releases, and it's a powerful statement to make in what can be called a male-dominated market, which we know. And Whittemer has worked at the Beam Distillery for more than 30 years and was actually hired by Booker No on the spot after a 15-minute interview. So, or after the numbers 2019, there should be a letter.
O1E. So E.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So 3% of all of this batch came from the fourth floor of a 9-story warehouse, E.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of special, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So as you can tell, it's got a really dark color to it. It's like an amber kind of color. And I don't know if you've poured yours yet, but if you do you get like apple, peaches, and maybe even marzipan on the nose?
Yes. Well, now that you say the marzipan, I definitely get that as well. But the apple peach scent I was getting for sure.
It was really weak. I'm sorry.
There was a little echo there. We could hear it.
The smallest of an echo. Oh, yes. That smells so good.
Delicious.
All right. Have you taken a sip yet?
I am right now. Oh, yeah. That is got a bunch of heat to it, right in the old bourbon pocket there, but it has a lot of flavors. It's like a delicious little toffee treat with some, I don't know, like dried fruit in there, all mixed into one.
I'm also getting like a bittery vanilla kind of flavor to it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so can you please tell our listeners what the proof of this is?
Absolutely. It comes in at a raving 62.95.
So multiply that by 2.
Holy smoke balls. That's got a lot of flair on it.
Yeah, it definitely does. But it's remarkably not alcohol or ethanol flavored. A lot of heat and a lot of spice and a lot of nutmeg, and it's very good. But before we go any further, since we have our bourbon pockets warmed, it's time for my favorite game.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather be touched by a ghost having their finger up your nose, or touched by a ghost by having them lick in your ear?
Wow. I was never a fan of a wet willy, which that seems, eerily close to, the lick in the ear thing. Mm-hmm. I don't mind a good nose pick occasionally. So,
oh my God.
Especially, if there's a couple bats in the cave, they could be helping me out really. So,
oh my God. Yes, of course you would. Of course you would say that.
I'm going to go with the nose pick. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's amazing. Okay.
So mine, somewhat related, but very offside to that. Would you rather be the ghost that frisks people, gives them a little butt grab unexpectedly, or even a little butt tap? Mm-hmm. Or would you rather be the aggressor in giving purple nurples, aka a titty twister, to unexpected people?
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? It'd be very scary to all of a sudden have that happen and not know what just happened.
So did you say that I'm the ghost or I'm getting this done by a ghost?
No, you're the ghost.
Okay, I'm definitely going with the butt grab.
All right.
Just because, there's random people that you see throughout the day and you're like, I wonder what their butt would feel like.
Is it squishy? Is it kind of hard? Yep. No, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Especially if there was like a cutie and you'd be like, oh, hey, cutie.
Right. Let me give that a little tap.
Oh my God. Okay. So guys, if you're wondering why we've been talking about touching ghosts and ghosts touching us, and if you haven't read the title of today's show, then I'm just going to put this out there. We have experienced some exceptionally strange things during our filming, especially for season 6. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about this one certain topic. And my whole life, I just kept telling myself that even if ghosts are real, then there's just absolutely no way that they can physically move something or hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was when I started to watch horror movies with you and we'd go to the movie theater and we'd get super freaked out that I started to even think about like, oh, if a ghost can pick up that, then a ghost can probably pick up a knife and stab you if they really wanted to. But I literally blocked that out of my mind. So let's just put this into like Kim's mind terms. Yes, I believe that Ouija boards can move. And scientifically, it's been discredited because as multiple people have their fingers on the planchette and stuff, and they're lightly touching it, it's like, oh yeah, well, you're all kind of like thinking about the same thing and want it to move the same way. And so as a group, even though you all have a light touch, you're making it go a certain way. It makes sense, but I haven't really done a whole lot of research as to really why it moves in the paranormal sense. So right after the break, we're going to dive in deep into other stories that have had similar encounters, and we cannot wait to scare you guys. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody. I feel really unsettled with our topic today, but I'm just going to start it off here. I mean, sure, I believe that ghosts can knock on things. They can make noises. Sure, it's been in the back of my mind. But it's more of a discovery of a primal fear, if you will, to know now that all of Kim's previous beliefs on this topic are a sham. The first story is called Slapped by a Ghost. How would you like to be roused from sleep like this? One night, I was awakened by a violent slap on the left side of my face, says Elizabeth, like with someone's open hand. Elizabeth at first thought it was her prankster sister, but then saw by the clock that it was 1:27 a.m. and her sister was sound asleep in another room. And the attack wasn't over. I felt pulling on my hair so much that it jerked my head around. Then my down comforter started to be pulled down, or at least it felt like it. Elizabeth wanted to scream, but felt paralyzed. The ghost apparently wanted her attention. Elizabeth then heard a woman's voice say, "Listen to me, listen to me." And then the pleas faded off into the darkness.
That is terrifying.
Yucky.
Don't want to sleep alone.
No.
Holy crap. Okay. So let's talk about a story that's fairly well known here in Nova Scotia. I personally wanted to share this story because it's iconic. And if you're not from Nova Scotia, then you may not know about it, but you might. This version of the story was written by Stephen Wagner. For months, a tormented 19-year-old girl and her family with deafening noises, horrifying threats, and unspeakable violence in one of the most famous poltergeist cases in Canadian history. Some ghost stories live on because of the sheer terror they brought into the lives of those who experienced them firsthand. For the most part, ghosts and apparitions are harmless to those who witness them, flickering briefly into view to perform some timeless task or to relay a message to a loved one, and then fading back into the unknown. Poltergeist activity, however, is another matter entirely. Seeming to center around an individual, a poltergeist produces physical phenomena that has been known to cause serious harm and otherwise scare the daylights out of its victims. Esther Cox of Amherst, Nova Scotia, was a victim in such a paranormal case that became one of the most frightening poltergeist accounts in Canadian history. The strange events were witnessed and documented by multiple people and even became the subject of a book. The year was 1878 and the place was Princess Street in Amherst, a town in north-central Nova Scotia where the province borders New Brunswick. Esther Cox, 19 years old at the time, lived in a small rented house with her married sister, Olive Teed, and her husband, Daniel Teed, and their 2 young children. The crowded little cottage was also home to Esther's siblings, Jenny and William, as well as Daniel's brother, John. Suddenly, inside of this ordinary home, horror struck, but not from some paranormal force, rather from an all-too-human monster. Esther was nearly raped by an acquaintance named Bob McNeil. He was a shoemaker with a disdainful reputation of which Esther had been unaware. Although she escaped the attack with minor injuries, the violence against her seemed to somehow open a door to further attacks, this time from an unseen entity or entities, and the Amherst poltergeist mystery began. Although the house was crowded with the Teeds and their extended family, it wasn't unusual for households to take in boarders to help pay the rent. Walter Hebel, a sometimes actor, was a boarder at the Teed residence when the first stirrings of supernatural phenomena took place. And he actually recorded them in his book, which is called The Great Amherst Mystery. One night, screams of fright brought all the adults from the house rushing to the room where Esther and Jenny, sisters, shared a bed. The girls had seen the formation of something moving under their covers as they were about to go to sleep for the night. Esther thought it was a mouse. A search turned up nothing. The girls returned to bed and the house quieted for the night. The following night, more screams disturbed the family. Esther and Jenny excitedly claimed that they had heard strange noises coming from a box of fabric scraps that was kept under the bed. When they brought the box out to the center of the room, it leapt in the air of its own accord and landed on its side. No sooner had the girls nervously righted the box when it jumped into the air again, which sent the girls screaming and crying. Up to this point, the events could have been attributed to the active imaginations of the two girls, especially given Esther's recent harrowing experience at the hands of Bob McNeil. But the third night would prove evidence to all in the Teed house that something far out of the ordinary was happening with Esther Cox. That night, Esther excused herself to bed early, complaining that she felt feverish. At about 10 p.m., soon after Jenny joined her in bed, Esther jumped up from the bed to the center of the room, tearing at her nightclothes and screaming, "My God, what's happening to me? I'm dying!" Jenny lit a lamp, looked at her sister, horrified to see that her skin was bright red and seemed to be swelling unnaturally. Olive rushed into the room and assisted Jenny in getting their sister back in bed, as she now seemed to be choking and struggling to breathe. The other adults watched in disbelief as Esther's entire body, which was remarkably hot to the touch, swelled and reddened. Esther's eyes bulged as she cried in pain, fearing that she was literally going to burst through her stretched skin. Then, from beneath Esther's bed came a deafening bang, like a clap of thunder, and it shook the room. 3 more loud reports exploded from underneath of the bed, after which Esther's swelling subsided and she fell into a deep, deep sleep. 4 nights later, these terrifying events repeated themselves. Esther's unexplained swelling and torture ended only by the thunderous noises from under the bed. At a loss to cope with this unearthly ordeal, Daniel asked local doctor, Dr. Cartwright, to examine Esther, and he was witness to some of the most frightening events of all. Attending Esther's bedside, he watched in astonishment as her pillow moved beneath her head, untouched by any hands. He heard the loud bangs from beneath the bed, but could find no cause for them. He saw her bedclothes thrown across the room by unseen hands. Then the doctor heard a scratching noise, like a metal tool scraping into plaster. Dr. Cartwright looked to the wall above Esther's bed and saw letters nearly a foot high etching themselves into the wall. When it was done, it had spelled out, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." Are you kidding me? Like, okay, are you going to sit there the whole time and watch them carve something out that long?
Exactly.
Oh, God. A jagged clump of plaster then tore off the wall, flew across the room, and landed at the doctor's feet. After 2 hours, the house fell quiet. Dr. Cartwright, out of courage, compassion, or curiosity, returned the next day and bore witness to more unexplained manifestations. Potatoes hurled themselves across rooms. The deafening noises now seemed to be coming from the roof of the house, yet when the doctor investigated, there was no apparent cause. Of these events, years later, he would write to a colleague. Honestly, skeptical persons were on all occasions soon convinced that there was no fraud or deception in the case. Were I to publish the case in the medical journals, as you suggest, I doubt if I would be believed by physicians generally. I am certain I could not have believed such apparent miracles had I not witnessed them. The doctor could, of course, do nothing to help Esther or to settle the disturbances at the Teed home. The haunting continued and, in fact, became more destructive and threatening. Unexplained fires erupted around the house. Knives and forks were thrown by some entity, sticking violently into woodwork. Lit matches materialized out of thin air and dropped onto beds. Furniture moved about itself, flipping over or slamming into walls. Loud slaps were heard, followed by the appearance of red finger marks on Esther's face. Sewing pins appeared from nowhere and were jabbed into Esther's face.
Oh my God.
A pocket knife was ripped from the hand of a neighborhood boy and stabbed into Esther's back.
Oh.
Poor tormented Esther tried several times to escape the devilish entity, but it followed her wherever she went. One Sunday, Esther attended a Baptist church service and sat in one of the rear pews. Once the service had begun, knockings and rappings echoed through the church, seeming to come from the front of the church. The noises grew louder and louder, drowning out the minister's sermon. Knowing that she was the cause, she left the building and the noises stopped. She even tried to spare her family from the malevolent haunting. At first, she moved to a neighbor's house, but the poltergeist followed her and she was forced to return home. The Teed's landlord, fearing the destructive nature of the phenomena, wanted to evict the family. Again, taking responsibility for the events, Esther moved herself out and finding work at a nearby farm. When the farm's barn burned to the ground, however, the farmer had Esther arrested for arson, for which she was convicted to a 4-month sentence. Fortunately, Esther only served 1 month in jail and then was released. The short sentence may have at first seemed like a low point to the much troubled Esther, but it did have its upside. After she was freed from the jail, the poltergeist activity seemed to just fade away. There were minor instances for a short time, and then the haunting stopped completely. Esther later married twice and died in 1912 at the age of 53, which is not very old.
Mm-mm.
Walter Hubble published his book, The Great Amherst Mystery, after her death, and it included an affidavit signed by 16 witnesses of the horrific events at Amherst.
That is like a horror movie in itself. Like, that is absurd, the amount of stuff that happened.
Isn't that crazy?
Quite.
Yuck. Awful. Now, this next story, Jen, I was just kind of reading ahead a little bit. I don't think you're going to like it.
Great. I'm already excited. Shadow at the inn. Roger had a close call with a shadow person that he felt was trying to attack him. And this was in the middle of the afternoon, back in 1967. Roger was a college student working for the summer at a large motel in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Roger lived with several other employees at an old stone house a few miles down the road where a brutal murder had allegedly taken place. It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon when Roger was in his bedroom trying to catch a quick nap. I remember the events clearly, Roger says. I looked at my clock and it was 1 p.m. as I lay down on my bed and closed my eyes. Instantly, I was flushed with extreme fear as I opened my eyes. Then, out of the wall, on this bright and sunny day, came a black shadow man with arms outstretched towards me. Its shape changed slightly as it left the wall and drifted towards me. I definitely don't like this story.
I know.
It was a full torso, about 6 feet tall. I uttered a gasp and again closed my eyes for an instant. I opened them again, and it was still drifting towards me, the arms outstretched as if to choke me. I was paralyzed with fear and gave another and louder gasp. It came to within 3 to 4 feet of me and then dissipated. Ew, Kim. Ew. Similar to the bedroom experience.
That's why I was so freaked out when you started telling me, because I knew that at some point I had compiled a story that was like that, and I'm sorry that I'm the one that made you read that. That is so awful.
Great. Well, it's always like, you have to accept the problem first, maybe come to terms with it. So great. Somebody else had a similar experience. Perfect. Great.
Okay. Moving along. To push down the stairs. Seeing a black shadow trying to choke you is one thing, and getting shoved down some stairs where you could possibly break your neck is quite another. Yet, that's what happened to Melanie S. in 1982 while at Gentleman Jim's restaurant, which is now Ashley's of Rockledge in Rockledge, Florida. The restaurant had a reputation for being haunted by the ghost of a woman who had been murdered on the nearby railroad tracks in the 1920s. Melanie was there on a double date with some friends and were hoping to catch a glimpse of something otherworldly. We did see the lamp over the salad bar sway continuously all night, she says. So we were pleased and felt that we had gotten our money's worth. Melanie was soon to get more than her money's worth, however. As we were getting ready to go down the stairs, I told my date to get in front of me because I was known to be a klutz and didn't want to fall down the stairs, Melanie says. So they all got in front of me. We were all making jokes about the ghost and feeling pretty frisky. As we were going down the stairs, I felt a huge shove against my back and fell down the stairs. My wonderful companions moving aside to let me make my own way down. That's nice. Looking back up, Melanie could clearly see that there had been no one behind her that could have shoved her. No one living, that is.
Ew.
Paul from our show Haunted, he was pushed down the stairs.
Right.
And he was pushed down the stairs, I think it was at the Seaside Community Center like a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of feisty ghosts out there.
Apparently so.
So moving on to the beating. What's more terrifying than being attacked by some unseen entity? Having one of your children being attacked by some unseen entity. That's what happened some years ago, according to Yolanda, who lived with her 4 children in an ordinary 4-bedroom home in Germantown, Pennsylvania. One night at about 10:30, Yolanda was home with her 14-year-old daughter, Tiffany, who was sound asleep in the back room. I walked to the bathroom, and on the way out, I noticed her door cracked just a little. Yolanda says I paid no mind and headed back to my bedroom and relaxed until I was startled by her door slamming loudly. I yelled her name twice, and I got no response. Then the horror began. Before I could get off the bed, I heard her screaming, "Get off of me! Get off me!" I ran into her room to find her lying in the dark, shaking and trembling. I asked her what happened, and she said that someone was beating her. She had scratches all over her arms. I knew no one was in the house but us 2. Yolanda soon moved her family out of that house, a place she later learned where 5 people had overdosed on drugs in that back room.
That's awful.
I mean, yeah, it's another story when they're attacking your kids as well. So
yeah, I mean, they always say if there's going to be a haunting, it's usually because of some traumatic or extremely negative experience where somebody had died. But if like 5 people overdosed and died, it doesn't say that they died, but there's a couple of theories to that. Maybe they overdosed because they had to turn to drugs because there was something so negative that was in that room that just basically like made them do it. Or it's the accumulation of them all having traumatizing deaths that there's this negative, gross, haunting energy there. That's gross.
It's odd to get 5 people overdosing at the same time, unless somebody forced them to overdose or they were all given something bad, we'll say. So maybe on that note, I can offer some, protective measures against any negative spirit or poltergeist.
Yes. So now that we've scared the bejesus out of all of our listeners, here's what you can do at home to try to protect yourself.
You can use the white light shielding technique. Basically, imagine being completely outlined in white light.
Yeah,
so just
that's a good one. I like that.
Block yourself in the white light. You can say a protection prayer or spell.
Yes, that's also great.
And wear some special stones, amulets, or pendants, which I do actually have quite a few stones here
Can you
in my room.
Lay them on top of your forehead, on your mouth, on your chin, on your neck, on your chest?
I'm going to duct tape them to myself.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to duct tape some stones, going to light some white candles, and say a bunch of prayers and call it a day. Yeah.
I will say some prayers for you too, my friend. I will. I feel so bad that that's even in the same proximity as you. And by that, I mean the thing that's in the box.
Yeah. Great.
Yes. That pretty much wraps up today's episode on that note. And Jen, if people want to find out more about Booze and Bourbon, where can they subscribe to the podcast and find us on social media?
Well, you can subscribe to us basically on any app provider for podcasts. You can also find us on the ABV network if you do not have one of those lovely little apps. You can find us on Instagram, You can also find us on Facebook, Booze and Bourbon, the podcast. We do have a Linktree link on our Instagram account that will take you to our Redbubble store, which is quite exciting, actually. And I might add that a lot of people are getting Christmas gifts this year from that store.
We have been selling a lot of Blanton's artwork socks lately.
Oh, okay.
People are liking the Blanton socks.
All right. We are on YouTube as well, so our YouTube channel. Our most recent news article, which is very exciting, and you can also see us on Eastlink TV, channel 10 or 610, Saturday nights at 10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time.
Yay!
And you can also give a haunted TV series a follow on Instagram as well, which, just happens to be a very cool thing to follow right now, especially because we're kind of a big deal. Just joking.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say that it's really cool because it gives our viewers that can watch us, that are Eastlink subscribers, it gives them behind the scenes of what we're doing like right now, what we're filming for. So the stuff that's not going to come out until the spring. So that's really cool.
And just to see how well we contain ourselves when we're scared, aka not containing ourselves at all.
Not good. Not good. Shit's getting real. Also, guys, please don't forget to send us your emails, or if you want to send us a voice note, you can do that with your own spooky stories. We are going to be doing a listener story very, very soon. We've compiled some. We're going through them now. We would love your contributions, so please send them to Booze and Bourbon. That's BOOSAND Bourbon @gmail.com. And thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Very sorry if we scared you. We just want you guys to know what's going through our mind these days.
Yeah.
Booze and Bourbon is part of the ABV network. For more information or to advertise on the show, please head over to abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.